Jedi style. Jedi. I'm adding Jedi style to it because I just like doing that. Did you? How long were you in Carol's Stream then? Did you ever leave Carol's Stream for? That was you were there till the movie.
We when I was really young, we lived in the city. We lived in Chicago. I can't remember. I don't know. I'm sure I can ask my parents, but I don't know when we moved out to the burbs.
Okay.
How old are kids when they're in second grade?
11?
Is it
no,
11?
Wait, second grade. What am I talking about? That's fifth grade, sixth grade. 8, 7, 8.
Old?
7, 8.
So
I'm thinking Waldorf years though. They're a little.
So I remember going into second grade in the burbs because when the teacher was introducing me, she asked me what's my name, and as a kid it was Enrique, and she introduced me to the class as Enrique, and
Enrique.
Everybody was like Ricky, Ricky, Ricky. So the EN dropped off, and then it was just Ricky for the rest of that time.
That's when it started off.
So I grew up in the burbs. Have been in the burbs my whole life.
Urbanite.
Living in the city now. Been living in the city since got married, divorced, and now I'm still here.
I remember your wedding. I was at your wedding.
Yeah, the wedding was fun.
The whole film posse was there.
It was a good time. Yeah. I only invited the fun people.
The ones who could keep up dancing. I've never seen so many fast feet in all my life.
But that was the point, because at that time in my life, that was like mid-20s. I was a DJ. That's the interesting thing, because I was so introverted as a kid, and here I am like DJing and gotta like blah. But I DJ'd so many weddings that I was like, here's what I want. And it's so interesting because I don't know how it is now, but I remember when I was in that little lifestyle of being a DJ, the guys were always the grooms, a majority of them were always at the bar with their buddies doing shots like crazy. The brides were on the floor dancing with their girls. And a lot of them argued on the night of their wedding. That's what I would see as a DJ, and I'm like, wow, who the fuck wants to get married if this is what it's like on the first night? And so I wasn't a drinker. I wasn't much of a drinker growing up anyway, so I was like, I just want to have fun. I don't really dance, but I want to, like, if this is the one night where you get married, like, I just want to jam. And so I invited friends that were extroverted like that. I didn't invite friends, because I have friends that are the type of guys that want to sit at the bar and do shots. Those people weren't invited to my wedding. I only invited the dancers.
You were working on boundaries, and I think this is seamlessly already going into its thing. So I want to kind of stick with you if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I think that's cool, setting your boundaries. That's kind of, that's the way of a Jedi. Well, wait, let me put on my fancy new banner. So, part 2. Years. I only have the banners down, people.
Yeah, the teenage years.
What is there anything? Well, because you were kind of just getting your foundation in the early years, but anything from those baby Yoda little years, you feel you definitely carried over into your teenage years, like the toys. Were you still actively playing in the? Which is all teenagers do. They're just too chicken to say they do.
I was still playing with the toys, going into high school, for sure. I had a few friends that maybe knew about it, but it's not like I said, that was kind of like my way to escape this world.
Yeah.
And the video games for sure. I started, the one thing that kind of started a mini transition from going to, being a kid to going into teenage years is when I started wrestling. That was in 8th grade. So that carried over into high school. And that was a different world, because for me, doing the sports thing was, I never did like little leagues. Again, we grew up on the other side of the track. So like Sandlot baseball, that was me and my friends.
Oh, I love that movie.
We didn't have the uniforms. We weren't even like Bad News Bears. We didn't do little leagues.
Aw.
So it was always like the Sandlot games. We played football, we played baseball and all that kind of stuff. And me and a couple of my friends were into Hulk Hogan and wrestling and things like that. So when they
Glow.
brought
I love Glow.
yeah,
That was
when
my
they
dream.
when they brought wrestling to our junior high, we signed up right away thinking like we're gonna be jumping off the top rope and things like that.
That's cute.
And it was totally not that kind of wrestling. And it wasn't playtime. We had a really cool coach. The coach that coached us in 8th grade. Later, he went on to coach high school football and took a few teams down to state championships. Like this guy was awesome. So he was one of the first coaches I had that was like, I'm taking you from being a little boy to growing into being a man. And that was like the mini transition from being a kid to high school, was having somebody like that in my life.
That was a good mentor right there.
Yeah.
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 So, and were you still considered, because it's still kind of an introverted sport in a way. You're individual, but on a team, but you still had to really put yourself out there.
Yeah. The part that where you put yourself out there is wearing the singlet, wearing the uniform, because you're kind of exposed.
You're out there.
Yeah, you're out there. But you know, at that point in time, it was the way he coached us was like, he's like, there's guys, because you know, like I said, I grew up in 8th grade. The sports that we had were the track and field, not track and field, but like running sports, like doing miles and stuff like that. Basketball, floor hockey, and then wrestling. And wrestling was like brand new when we started. So even though I played basketball, like I said, with my friends, we never did like the little league. So we didn't know where people were supposed to go. We didn't know positions, who was the center, who was the point. Like I didn't know any of that stuff as a kid.
Wow.
But but our coach, our wrestling coach, was like, those kind of sports there's no equal to what we're doing here, because you have to rely on somebody else on your team sometimes to like pass the ball to you and shoot and all that kind of stuff. In wrestling, it's just you and the other guy on the mat, or girl on the mat, and that's it. And that's kind of like, you know, as a kid, that's kind of like mini hardcore. You're just like, yeah, I'm out here I'm either going to get my ass kicked or I'm going to kick ass. And that's just kind of the attitude that we had. So it was kind of cool having that that mindset from that coach, like, hey, go out there and do your thing. Really sweet.
With fitness being your jam now, do you think, was it already kicking in then? Were you already fascinated with like how the body works? And because I know there's a lot of discipline in wrestling too.
Yeah, there's a lot of discipline, but no. The personal training thing, that didn't start for me until I got fat and I needed to lose weight. So that was like years later. That's going into my 30s.
He's single, everybody. Just
yeah.
I wrote something down I wanted to ask you though.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Were you still in Carroll Stream when you went to high school? Like, is it Carroll Stream High or high school you went to?
Yes. Yeah. So again, going into the two worlds thing.
Yeah.
The junior high that I went to was in Wheaton, Illinois.
Okay.
I lived in Carroll Stream, so we're like literally across the tracks. We're in another township. And Wheaton had two high schools, Wheaton North and Wheaton Central at the time. So we were getting the junior high that I went to, a majority of the kids fed into Wheaton Central. So even when we were busting in every day, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we knew that we were going to be going to Wheaton North. So we were always like, Central sucks, because we knew in high school we were going to North. And that was another weird thing, because all my friends that I grew up with were now at a different high school, and like me and a handful of kids were now going to a brand new high school. And we, like, there was a lot of people that we didn't know there because they grew up in a different area of town. And I was only there for one semester, and we moved out of the apartment complex that we lived in when I was growing up. My parents bought a townhome, and so my freshman year I started at Wheaton North, and then went to a completely different high school. I mean, completely different. That was another world all in itself.
Oh, that's so hard.
Yeah,
Did you shut down in either one?
No, I actually, like, what was interesting was the high school that I went to, the way I described it in that time frame when I was a freshman was ghetto to me, because I grew up in a preppy area of town. Everybody was like Cavaricis and look sharp and all that kind of stuff.
Was this the first high school you said? This was the first.
Yeah, the first high school. That's, everybody was like preppy.
Okay.
And then the high school that I was going to, everybody was a wannabe gangbanger, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" So I'm in a weirdo spot. But the thing that was awesome was the sport that I liked, the wrestling, was headed by two coaches at the new high school that I was going to, and these guys were like badass. Wow. So it's not that the last high school didn't have a badass coach, but like where I was going to was, they were like gonna take off, and they actually eventually did after I graduated. But
where was it? What was the second high school?
Glenbard North. Glenbard North was in Carroll Stream.
Okay.
So, but I moved closer to that high school than I was at Wheaton North.
Okay. Because I'm sure we played you, because we were high school the same time too, and we had a great basketball.
Which
Barrington. I was talking from Schaumburg. Barrington was, no, you didn't. It was very John Hughes.
It may have been like basketball or track and field or things like that, but we never got around to you guys. I think there's a tournament that Barrington holds, or they did in the last few years, that my high school is a part of now. Like they're in that tournament. Mm-hmm. But when I was in school, we didn't cross paths.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. So you go to this new school and it's kind of gangbangery, but you're still feeling like you're coming out of your introverted stage a little, so you didn't shut down, and we're like, oh
no, I didn't shut down. It was I made a few friends there that were cool. Mm-hmm. And they were the extroverted type, and so hanging around them was like slowly peeling the onion kind of thing for me, and just like getting exposed to that stuff. The really cool thing that, like I said, when you were having that interview with Aaron, the really cool thing that I remember from high school, from my freshman and sophomore year, once the season was done, football's done, wrestling's done, I would stay after school, work out, and still have to wait for the bus to show up. So I would go to the library, and I read, they had these Time Life books, and the Time Life books that I was into, they talked about the Old West, like Billy the Kid and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then the other version of Time Life books that they had were, they actually talked about like Men in Black and aliens and things like that. Cool. That's what opened up the alien stuff doors for me. I was like, whoa, like the Star Wars stuff is actually really real. Like that's what I was getting out of those books. Like there was people that were in those books that were experiencing things that I was like, no freaking way. Like there's real spaceships out there. Like Star Wars isn't fake. Like I said, for me, in my mind, it's always like, what if? Mm-hmm. I never knew if it was real or not. Even like I've had friends ask me up to this day, like, do you believe in aliens? I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen one. I don't know, but what if? Like, so
That's really cool.
yeah.
Were there any kind of like teenage stereotype kind of traps that you fell into? You know, like, because now you're in middle of high school and this would have been 90, kind of like,
Yeah.
right? So things were kind of shifting socially for everybody, I think,
The only, like I said, I wasn't a drinker or anything like that. I never got into the drug thing. I never, the whole drinking and the drug thing, I was put off by it because of how I saw what it did to other people.
Smart.
And like, I had an uncle that when we went to like family parties, he would get like wasted all the time, and I'm just like seeing my other aunts and uncles or cousins helping him, and he's stumbling around at like family parties. I was like, why would you drink to get to that level?
Yeah. Well, that's
So
nice to see that and carry that into your own life. That's
and it was just like, I'm like, I don't want that for my life. And there's, like I said, there's another piece of it, and that's like when you're in sport and you have these coaches that are like, take care of your body. If you don't take care of your body, what you're trying to do out on the mat, you're gonna get your ass kicked because somebody's in better shape, or like they have more up here than you do, that kind of thing. So the whole drinking and drug thing and smoking, that was never a part of me. The traps, if there was any traps, is I think I got lazy when I was a teenager, because I remember, like, you know, you got kids, they're at that age when they're starting to rebel. My daughter's kind of there, and I think my biggest thing was like, why am I taking the classes that I'm taking? Like, I'm not learning the shit that I want to learn. I want to be a filmmaker. By that point, like when I was a teenager, I'm like, I want to do what George Lucas is doing.
Oh, good. That's when that kicked in. Okay.
And so I'm like, why am I not in like art classes? Why am I not taking photography classes? Because my counselors were picking my classes. You know, they're like, well, you're going to take Spanish, and you're going to do this English class, and you're going to do that math class, and this and this and that. And I was like, I don't want to learn this shit. Like, if I'm supposed to have a career down the line, this isn't what I want it to be. So there was always there was always that pushback from me internally to like my counselors and my teachers. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Even like learning the Constitution, I'm like, I don't want to learn this bullshit. What's it got to do with my life, right? Little did I know.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing for me was I got lazy. Like, my grades were awesome, and then
I was just going to ask you,
let them slip.
You let him slip.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, I could have graduated at 16.
Oh, wow.
I was the younger. Do you know how they have the cutoff and all
Yeah.
that stuff?
Well, we remember we both were on that weird cutoff, right?
Yeah.
I was one of the youngest in my class.
So I'm the youngest, one of the youngest in my class, and I had like I said, my counselor was picking everything, so I had all the credits to graduate at 16.
Jeez.
And I remember sitting down with my counselor, and she's like, oh, you know, you can graduate at 16, blah, blah, blah. Here's what you got to do to finish. I'm like, I don't want to graduate. I'm like, I got my senior year of football and wrestling. I'm like, you kidding me?
Same. I was telling you, right, there's so many similarities.
So she held back 2 classes that I needed to take for my senior year, so I wasn't like forced to graduate at 16. But wow. I had the GPA, I had the credits, all that kind of stuff to graduate at 16. I didn't want to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's not similar at all to me with grade wise, but not wanting to leave high school was huge. I did not want to leave high school. I was a wreck on graduation day because I was so busy, all the activities. Very average student. I had something that I just thought something was wrong with me, but now I look back at what it was. But I had a tendency to and this became later in high school, and then of course through the entire college, the teacher would be like, ready to go, sitting in front of the whole thing, and then it would be like, and it was just, it doesn't matter how enigmatic. Well, they had to be really, like, the science guy was awesome because he was busy. You know, he was an entertainer.
Right.
The rest, nothing soaked in. Now I see it as, I think I was preventing myself from being indoctrinated. But were you attentive in class? Like, were you a polite kid or a good kid? Or
I was a good kid. I just, like I said, as going into my junior year, my senior year is a different story, but like sophomore and junior year, I would literally like be asleep in class.
Mhm.
And I had teachers like what you had that were like entertaining. They made it fun. They like, there's engagement in it.
Mhm.
And I think, unfortunately, I think that's what's kind of missing in the whole school thing is like, how does this apply to what you're learning? Like when I left school, I think I picked up more books after high school and college than I did all the years, like all those like 8, 9, 10 years combined. I probably learned more on my own than I did with teachers just because of the curiosity, but that was never built in when I was taking classes.
That's very similar. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there anything, because you're kind of similar ages, isn't your daughter's in high school now, right? Would she be?
She will be this year coming up, like in September, August.
What do you have anything at the top of your head that you're like, if you could just give her like some advice for high school, or because this day and age is so different from when we were in high school.
That's the tough part.
Yeah.
That's the tough part because like before she was born, one of my friends from high school that I used to play football and wrestle with, when he went into his career, he became a teacher, and now he was like the head wrestling coach, which I thought was amazing. I'm like, what the hell? Like, you get to do the fun stuff.
Yay.
And you know, kind of like with me and him sort of lost touch, but we stayed in contact, but we weren't like hanging out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were at a friend's baby's baptism or something like that, and we started talking, and he's like telling me what school he's at and where he's working. I'm like, dude, that's like 15 minutes from my house.
Oh.
So he's like, come out and, you know, wrestle with the kids and whatnot. So I remember the first couple of times I went out to just like hang out and participate in some of the practices with the kids, I was like, these fucking teenagers are knuckleheads. That was the first thing that went through my head. And there was a part of me that's like, man, they're so different from like how I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned that even though they dressed differently, even though they were listening to different music and all that stuff, like deep down inside, a teenager is a teenager is a teenager. So, and they were great kids, because I ended up not just hanging out for practice, I ended up coaching for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, if I had any advice for my own daughter, it'd be like, teenagers are vicious sometimes. As you know, the people you think that are your friends will like turn their back on you in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's the hormones, if that's the puberty or whatever. But the outlet that I had as a kid or as a teenager was sports, playing video games, just having that imagination of like, there's another world, even though I don't like this world that I'm in.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of escapism too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, and my daughter's into gymnastics, so she has that, but I would almost like, the other thing too that I just remembered here, when I was a teenager, sometimes when I'd hang out at my friend's house, their moms and dads were like my mom and dad. Cool. I had like my mom and dad, and then I had my extra mom and my extra dad over here at my friend's house. And they were always, you know, if we did something wrong as a group, they were also the ones that were reprimanding us. So as a teenager, I didn't just have my folks like looking down my back. I had other parents, and I think I didn't look for it. It's just something that happened organically. Mm-hmm. But I would probably, you know, if there's any kind of advice I would have for my daughter or any kid, is like, if you can't go talk to your parents, which I was always quiet around them, so I never like opened up to them. I still would open up to like the other moms that I knew, or the other dads, or the other dads would kick my ass because I was doing something stupid. My dad didn't know about it, but these guys did, and they made sure I straightened up.
Oh, that's
So
so
if
having
there's
an elder in your life to turn to, under transparency and all.
and somebody that's gonna like look out for you, you know, they're it's somebody like that. Like if my daughter can't come and talk to me because she's not, we don't have that relationship, or she's not comfortable talking to me, at least have somebody that you can talk to that's
Mhm.
not gonna take advantage of you, that's gonna try and help you out and maybe kick your butt, to help straighten you out, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good one. That's beautiful. And
Yeah.
she's in gymnastics. That's another. It's similar wrestler in the discipline and the it's
Hmm.
individual and oh, that's
she's
cool.
a she's a tough cookie.
She's a tough cookie. She's lovely. I've followed that journey too.
Yeah.
I feel like I have known her all her life online. Oh, you work on that. Well, that's kind of cool. Was there anything? Well, there's the early years, your baby
Hmm.
Yoda years, the teenage years, and then I mean we could carry it on into the later, but anything significant that happened in the teenage years that really shaped your adulthood that you're
The
like a turning point?
the big thing, like I said, that's why I said senior year was a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
Was I busted my knee playing football, and when I hear myself talk about it, I'm like, it's just, it's just an injury. It's not a big deal. Like, why did you get into, like, why did you fall the way you fell? My, on the inside, like the little kid on the inside was big into the wrestling thing. Me and my friends did like summer tournaments. So when the season's already done, this sport's already hard enough. Our dumbasses are like, let's go do some more. So it was already difficult. And the thing is, it's like, it's what's interesting is like back then we had some of our parents that were like into the wrestling thing, so they would drive us to the tournaments. But um for us, me and my friends, is like we were like calling each other up and saying, tournament Friday we're going, tournament Saturday we're going. And it was just like this
Wow.
little group thing that we went out and did together. Whereas like nowadays, what I see with kids is like a lot of the parents are pushing the kids to do all this like extra shit.
Yeah.
That sort of bothers me. But
Wow, I see that a lot, but it really bothers me. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so but we as a group used to go out to do these tournaments, and so on the inside I had a lot of energy invested in the wrestling thing.
Mm-hmm.
And football to me was just fun. It wasn't like um anything more special than that.
Okay. You weren't
So
like
when
participating.
yeah, it was just like it was just the interesting thing is, when we started my senior year football, I almost quit because I was like, fuck this, I'm just gonna like focus on the wrestling thing. The head wrestling coach, I worked with him in the summer. We used to bale hay, and that was a pretty cool experience. But
Wow.
I told him, I'm like, hey, I don't want to play. I'm like, I'm on the sidelines. I'm not even on the field. Like, I'm not starting. Like, this is bullshit. I would rather just take the time that I have now and focus on getting my body strong for the wrestling season. He's like, you're not a quitter. I'm not going to let you quit.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it was that mentality, that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So I stuck with it. We go into the playoffs. I was dragging a kid on my left side, and I got hit on the right, so I busted my knee. My knee, if your knee does, wait, where's the camera? If your knee does this, my
Yeah.
knee went that way, like that way.
Nisha it's no joke.
Yeah,
Wow.
tore two ligaments, and I was out. I was in a cast for 6 weeks. So this is at the end of the football season, and the wrestling season is coming right on top of that.
Oh.
And when the cast came off, I was talking to my coach. I'm like, I want in. And he's like, it's not going to happen.
Oh no.
And not because he didn't want me in the lineup or anything like that. He's like, your knee's not going to be able to handle it. But to his credit, because I was pushing, after one of the practices was done, he stayed with me in the wrestling room. He goes, okay, I want you on the mat and you're going to stand up. I'm going to blow the whistle. I want to see how fast you can stand up. And I was like, no problem. Because I was one of the fast ones when I had a good knee.
Oh no.
So he's like, I want you to stand up off of that knee that you busted. And I went and I flopped over. It didn't hurt, but I didn't have the strength in the knee in the leg to move. And
oh man,
he's like, do it again. And it sucked. I don't know if it sucked as much for him to watch, but like the realization came over me that I'm like, I can't fucking do it. Not in the time frame that we have, right? If I had a year, maybe, but that to me was one of the like the major moments in my young life, because when it happened, I was like, well, you know, things happen for a reason, and I had this little mindset like everything's going to be fine. But what I didn't realize is it was so important to me, and losing that, I thought like God took it away from me. I'm like, dude, I have at the time when I was going through this, I was like, I got friends who are a-holes. They cheat on their girlfriends. They're smoking weed. They're doing other kind of drugs. They're drinking all on the weekends. I'm none of those things. Why did I get taken out?
Yeah.
And so going into the summer and into the fall, when I went into college, I went into like a deep depression spiral. And that's like my little dark night of the soul. And I had one of those, and it was eye-opening, because for me at that time it was like, so I'm 17, like I said, I almost graduated when I was 16. I'm 17, freshman in college, depressed, suicidal.
Oh shit.
I didn't have the balls to do it though. I'm like, because every time I thought about pulling the trigger, I thought about my mom and dad.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can't fucking leave them like that.
So that was just monumental. Did you ever think, why didn't I graduate earlier? Because now I couldn't do anything. No, okay. No shoulda, wouldas or anything.
My thoughts and my anger were directly like focused on God. I was like, fuck you for doing this to me.
So then you're depressed, and what did you do?
And the interesting thing is, like, you know, if we go back to like the kid years, we went to church and stuff like that. I wasn't a fan of it because every service that we went to was in Spanish, and I didn't understand what the priest was talking about. So I was like, do. And the impression that I got from going to church was that God's out there and we're over here. And I never felt like that as a kid. But when the injury happened with my knee, then it really felt like there was a separation, because I was like, why the fuck would you do that to me? Like, that's the mindset that I had. And the dark night of the soul, I went out drinking. I got like really wasted with some friends, and I went to school in Southern Illinois, out in Carbondale.
Oh,
and there's nothing out there.
It's the party like, school too, yeah.
Yeah, but it's in the middle of nowhere.
That's why, probably. Yeah, they're bored.
And but we went out. I got really wasted, and we went out to a roller skating rink. And I remember I was so drunk, I wanted to fight people, and my friends were trying to stop me because I didn't know, because I was wasted, trying to fight kids, and they're like, go sit down, take off the fucking roller skates and calm down. I did that, and then I left, and I walked out, hopped over a fence, and I'm in the bush. I'm in the swamp. And I don't know how far I walked, but I ended up falling somewhere where there was water. And then I'm crying my eyes out, and I'm asking God, like, take me now from here, because I can't do it. And I laid there for I don't know how long. But that was like my dark night of the soul. I remember at some point I was like, where are the wolves? Where are the alligators? Why aren't you eating me? Like, I'm like, I'm bored. But I'm like, I'm done crying. I'm bored. I might as well just try to get my ass to the back to school, back to the dorms, but I didn't know where I was.
Oh no.
Found my way back. Got into my dorm. My friends were out looking for me. They didn't know where I went. So I'm sleeping in my room the whole night. They're out looking for me. And I told myself, or God or whatever, I was like, if I make it home without a scratch, I'll try to like get out of this depressed bullshit, whatever's going on. I don't know what it is, and I hate you for it. I'm like, I'm talking to God. I'm like, I hate you for this, but I'll try to hate you less if I get home without a scratch. And made it home. The next day I woke up, and you and I talked about like the little messages and stuff like that earlier. I had an alarm clock, like a little radio alarm clock, and I wake up to Whitney Houston singing I Will Always Love You.
Oh.
And that to me was like, when I woke up and I heard it, I heard that line as I woke up.
Oh.
And to me, that was like, I'm like, okay, I got the message. And I think that was the first time I had a connection to God.
The synchronistic, this connection to source right away. You're like, that's for me.
Not because of the church or anything like that, or the Bible or anything like that. It was the whole spiritual thing that you and I've talked about, and like that vibration or whatever. And I was like, all right, now I know that you're for real. And that's what it was for me. Because I thought growing up as a kid, it was like I said, the impression I got was God's over there and you're over here and you sin and all this kind of stuff, or whatever I thought at that time. But after that night, I was like, they're not teaching it right. Like, God isn't out there. Like, God's in here somewhere, and he hears me and talking to me in his own little way, through music, through movies, through books, through whatever.
Wow.
And that's what I got out of that experience. I was still mad after it. Like, it didn't completely go away. There were still moments where I was like, fuck this, I want to die. But
wow.
But there was no denying that there was not a God or something out there that's like watching over us.
And it took you in a watery ditch in the middle of you don't know where.
Busted my knee and everything. Like, I was literally like broken to get to
it was like a start over. Oh my gosh. So that carried you in. So then we get into, how are you feeling about that? Do you want to keep going?
It's up to you. How are you feeling?
I'm fine. I'm game. I'm fast. I love it.